What happens in the mind of con artists? What makes their brain so well equipped for psychological trickery? Is it greed? A lack of empathy? Loose morals? Whatever it is, we are fascinated by con artists.
American Matthew Cox was arrested and charged for bank fraud, identity theft, passport fraud, mortgage fraud, and probation violation.
Matthew Cox created fake companies, fake identities with fake social security numbers through which he started signing up for credit cards.
Cox even invented his own banks. The Bank of Ybor, the Southern Exchange Bank of Clarksville. This all helped him to make millions in the real estate market.
Cox's accomplices were mainly women who helped him run real estate scams in various states.
Cox even used plastic surgery to alter his appearance. But it all ended when the Secret Service arrested him and he was sentenced to 26 years in prison.
We've all been lied to. We've all been offered something that is just too good to be true, and still, we fell for it. Although we love a good con, we hate it when it happens to us. To find out how to resist the manipulation, we invited some of the greatest con artists to our institute. Together with a team of experts, we are going to analyze their stories, pick their brains, and reveal what their body language tells us. Welcome to the Institute.
Hello, Mr. Cox.
Hello.
Hi. How are you doing?
Fine.
Shall we?
Sure.
Hello, Matthew. Welcome. We're really pleased to have you with us. So let me start with the introductions. I'm Kerry Daines, and I'm a consultant forensic psychologist. And here we've got Mark Frank, and he is a professor of behavioral science.
So Matthew, as a behavioral scientist, I'm going to be interested in your behaviors, and not just simply on behaviors that you show, but your ability to recognize behaviors in other people and how attuned you are to those. So we'll put you through a variety of tests to look at things like how well you can judge people, how well you can judge little things like how they feel, and using that to try to help us get a better sense of what's going on inside here through what is manifested out here. But as far as going deep inside, that's where I turn it over to my colleague, Moran Cerf.
I'm a neuroscientist. I want to understand your psychology. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do interviews with you. I'm going to play games with you. And all the while, I'm going to look at your answers as well as your brain's answers. Ultimately, what we're going to do is we're going to have you strapped to a machine that we call EEG. It's a little swim cap that we put on your head.
Okay, that's it, I'm done. You just have to leave, but fine.
What in your brain makes you say that?
Just my fight or flight response kicked in, and I thought, listen, you need to go. This isn't what you thought. No, it's fine.
So I will be talking to you in depth in a couple of hours, but for now, make yourself at home. So settle into the Institute, take a little bit of time for rest maybe, and we'll start a little later on.
All right.
Okay?
Cool.
See you soon.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye. Lee. How are you?
Great.
You ready for this?
Absolutely.
Good, good. I'm interested in your journey to becoming a con artist, the development of it. So you started to create fake identities from forging documents to actually face-to-face deception. You would walk into a bank or you would walk into a social security office. Tell me about that. Tell me about the face-to-face deceptions.
Look, what I did initially was called Social Security. I told them I never had one issued. They said, if you've had a bank account or a driver's license, you have a Social Security card. So I hung up. I called back. I said, 33 years old, never had one. She was like, that's just not possible. Like, they're like, you need to come down here and talk to somebody. Bring your birth certificate. Hang up the phone. And they kept saying, if you were born in a hospital, it was issued. So then I was like, okay, I started thinking about that. So then I called back and I said, look, I have a son. He's 3 years old and doesn't have a Social Security card. I need one issued to him. They said, was he born in a hospital? No, he wasn't. He was born with a midwife. Oh, okay. Bring him down here. Oh. I called back. Then I say my wife left with my son. He's in Brazil right now with her. This time the person said, oh, that's too bad. Any children over the age of 12 months old have to show up. So I called back and I said, he's 10 months old, was born with a midwife. He's not in the country. What do I need to get him a Social Security number issued? And she said, I need his birth certificate and a shop record with his name and date of birth on it. No problem. I made it for a girl. I'd surveyed a woman who was homeless, and her name was Rebecca Hickey. And I made a birth certificate for a child that was 10 months old. Put it together, walked in, it was perfect. Social Security gave it to her, she looked it over. But as she was talking, I remember thinking, Rebecca doesn't sound like a baby. Like the name Rebecca doesn't sound like a baby. And I thought, what's a baby name for Rebecca? She said, where's the mother? I'd like to think that she's in a drug rehab somewhere, but she may be in jail. All I know is that baby Becca and I haven't seen her in 6 months. And as soon as I said baby Becca, I remember thinking, where'd you come up with baby Becca? And I started to laugh. And I went, I remember sitting there going, and she thought I was crying. And I remember telling myself, pull yourself together, bro. What are you doing? There's like a sheriff in the back. It's Social Security, what are you doing? And so I remember going, I'm sorry. And she goes, no, it's okay, I have to ask. And I said, okay, I'm sorry. And she goes, it's fine, hold on. She went on the computer, she looked, you're right. She's never had a Social Security number issue, hold on. Oh, okay, done. You'll have it in 10 days. She gave me my documents, I left. 10 days later, I got a Social Security number for Rebecca Hickey. I had the real Rebecca Hickey's birth certificate. So I combined those two together. I order her certified copy of her high school transcripts, plus register to vote in her name. I get a voter's registration card, and I send my girlfriend into the DMV driver's license.
How did you feel as you walked out of the Social Security office?
Felt great. Listen, it's like there's no better feeling in the world than walking into like Bank of America, handing them a fake W-2, fake canceled checks, fake driver's license, have them pull your credit on some guy that is a complete synthetic identity, and then sign the papers for a loan, have them hand you a check for $250,000 and thank you for ripping them off. You've been one of the best customers I've ever worked with. Thank you very much. And walk straight out of the bank. I mean, you feel like 007. You feel like James Bond.
So you were able, because you were being so successful in this industry with all of your fraudulent, applications, to have your own company.
Yeah, employed about 12 guys.
Did your employees know that they were fraudulent?
Absolutely.
Why were they prepared to get involved with something like this?
Because I was driving an Audi and they were driving, 10-year-old Fords.
Did some people say, well, actually, I'm out?
I actually did have brokers do that.
So they selected themselves in a way. The honest people went through the door, the dishonest people stayed with you.
Yes.
But it did collapse eventually, didn't it?
I was living with a girl at the time. Her name was Amanda, and Amanda had gone onto my computer one day to pull something up for me, and she saw a letter that I'd written to my parents. She thought my name was Joseph Carter. I was Joseph Marion Carter Jr.
Yeah, Joseph Carter.
Right. So I was going by Carter. She clicked on that, she looked at it, she read it, and it was a Georgia Margaret Cox, and it was signed Matthew. So she put in Matthew Cox, and my Secret Service's Most Wanted poster showed up. She contacted the Secret Service. I get out of my vehicle, cars pull up, locking up their brakes. They jump out with guns, so I immediately thought, I'm getting robbed. But then when I saw Secret Service, I realized that they told me to get on the ground. They handcuffed me.
And did you realize at that point that this was it, the game was up?
I did. My Secret Service's Most Wanted poster showed up. She contacted the Secret Service.
Once you slow it down and freeze it, all right, somebody's making this face at you, right, particularly now looking at you like this, that enhances the anger face. The brows are down, they're a little tense, the upper eyelid is up a little bit, he's glaring at you, and the lips are narrowed. Darwin said that, you know, the lips curl in as part of an anger face because it's sort of some primitive biting reflex, like your dog will growl and get the lips out of the way to facilitate a bite.
If this expression were any longer, you would back away, wouldn't you? Because it's pretty aggressive.
Right. But the thing that's also interesting is just how quick it was. And you go on in less than about half a second. This whole thing is on, and then he gets back control. It's caused by the fact that as he's thinking about it, an emotion is generated. Emotions are involuntary, they happen, and this pulse of anger shoots through his body. It hits his face, he gets it under control, but not before some of that leaks out.
Why do you think he's here?
Let's go back to James Bond.
There's no better feeling in the world than walking into like Bank of America, have them hand you a check for $250,000 and thank you for ripping them off. I mean, you feel like 007. You feel like James Bond.
The James Bond villain cannot help telling James Bond what his plan was because he's so proud of the plan.
Exactly.
Right? And so James Bond is strapped up and there's a laser about to cut him in two. So let's go tell Bond the plan because it's so good. I can't wait to tell somebody. And then, of course, James Bond escapes and, well, in this case, Secret Service got him. But nonetheless, I think there's some pride in that. And this is what we're seeing.
Yeah, I think he's here not to learn anything about himself. I think he's here to sell himself as the con artist extraordinaire in the hope that he can achieve a level of fame and fortune from this.
Crime that will pay.
EEG is a tool to measure brain activity. Looks like a swim cap that has electrodes on it that you put on the surface of the head, and it listens to brain cells deep inside. Does it feel comfortable, first of all, to you?
No!
I know why it's not comfortable. You put it reversed.
What?
That's the back. In the brain, you have billions of small cells, and they all, so to speak, make little sound that in itself is too weak for us to understand. If enough of them speak together, the EEG will pick up on that. So it will register that something happened in this part, or in this part, or in this part. And now we're gonna start getting your brain data. And we got it. If I get a con artist that has unique characteristic to him, let's say they feel no emotions at all when they see images, then after I show them enough pictures, and I see that those pictures don't change anything, there would be a result there. The part that has to do with memories, the part that has to do with emotion, the part that has to do with like attention, and so on.
Okay.
So for typical subject in a study, this person maybe doesn't feel emotion in a similar way to the control subjects, and that would be a result. Maybe they feel more. Maybe they're feeling emotional all the time. So the changes happen not just when I show them bad words or good words, every time I talk, it happens. Also a result. So everything that will be deviating from what I have as data from a lot of people that behave in one way would be interesting for me, and that's what I hope, expect, and look forward to. And you're gonna give me a number from 1 to 10, where 1 is very negative, 10 very positive.
5. 1. 9. 5. 2. 5. Jesus. 1. 5. 9. 3.
Done. Excellent. How do you think you did? Was it hard for you or easy? Did you think you did a good job or?
I would say better than average.
Any picture stood out to you say, oh my God.
Well, I mean, I didn't expect to see my family's pictures, but it didn't strike me one way or the other. I kind of have a neutral feeling about that.
And you gave them a 5 every time, so
yeah.
It was neutral.
Yeah, there was nothing that, it didn't shake me or anything.
So did you also measure brainwave activity?
Yeah.
And what was happening there?
It seems that his responses are all over the place. They cover from 1 to 10. The brain activity was a lot narrower. So he says 10, but the level of what we call approach is like a 6. It's a little bit making him feel. And when he says a 1, it's usually a negative picture, but it makes him move to like a 4. So he hovers around the 5 and he moves a little bit and the brain reflects the answer. But verbally, he's a lot more wider in the range than in brainwave.
But just curious, as far as any measure on the specifics of those images.
It wasn't that the picture of a family got a 5 on the ranking, but actually in his mind it was extremely negative. It's close enough, 4 to 5, so I can't really say it evokes negative feelings in him, but he suppresses them, and I wouldn't go that far.
So could this be a case of somebody who is very practiced at blocking out those emotions because they're distressing?
You have to have some kind of level of control of your emotions if you're dealing with it all the time.
What are the tools that he uses to be able to execute the cons, right? So when you look at, from that point of view, your ability to turn it on, turn it off, to manipulate and control the interaction, that becomes one of these requisite skills.
I think that the childhoods of our con artists tell us so much about the con itself. So why do they choose that particular one? And I don't know whether they are consciously aware themselves of why they've taken that route, but it all seems to make sense when you learn more about their childhood. People often don't have any awareness of the unmet needs that they bring with them from childhood, because it's just part and parcel of their life, it's part and parcel of their makeup. So let's start at the beginning. You were born in Tampa, Florida. Tell me about your family life.
Our father and son, time was going to the movies. Most of the time, it wasn't going to the movies. He would pick me up, and he'd drive me there, and he'd give me a $20 bill, and he'd wait and see me go buy the ticket and walk in there, and then he'd leave. That was our father-son time.
Tell me more about your father, because I understand that he had some problems.
He was an alcoholic, so he struggled with alcoholism and addiction to prescription painkillers.
So what was his pattern of behavior?
He was never physically abusive, but he was mentally abusive. He was just, my mom used to call it tongue lashings, she would say. And, he would call my sisters, whores. My brother was, my brother and I were useless and stupid. We'd never be anything.
And did you take that to heart?
Oh, definitely. I had dyslexia. I'm already failing in school. I could barely read and write. And I got this guy that I really admired telling me that I'm gonna be nothing. He was a functioning alcoholic, binge drinker. So he might go a month or two without drinking. He'd go on a binge for a week. He'd sober up for sometimes a year, and then he'd go on a binge for a week or two. So they put him in a rehab. He'd be okay for a year or two, and maybe he'd get drunk or 3 or 4 times in a year. Look, he was an asshole. The bottom line is he was just an asshole. I never felt safe.
And how did you survive those as a child?
I just became extremely quick-witted, was able to talk my way out. You become funny. You focus on getting people to like you.
You do see people who are brought up in homes where there's alcoholism or violence or other sorts of things, is they become fairly vigilant. In fact, hypervigilant is the word that we would use.
Well, he's looking around the room all the time. He seems to be monitoring his environment constantly.
Right, and when you see under threat, right, so it sort of initiates the emotion of fear. And with fear, your eyes get a little bit wider, you're looking around a little bit more. And when you widen your eyes, you're sort of expanding your visual field. And then moving your eyes, you're expanding it even further. And it often becomes sort of subconscious at this level. He knows you're not going to go take a swing at him.
Yeah, but he didn't know that when he was a child, did he?
Yeah.
He didn't know that his father wasn't going to take a swing at him.
Correct.
And let's not forget, this is a man who's just out of federal prison. He was on the run for how many years, where he had to be aware of his environment because he could have been apprehended at any time. So that hypervigilance, do you think that that will impact on his test results?
He would be better than average for sure, as far as reading the subtle emotions. Children raised in abused environments, so you would definitely predict that he would be better than the average person at reading other people. We're going to start out by looking at your judgment, your ability to read other people. So there's going to be 2 tests. This first one is going to feature 10 people, and they are going to either lie or tell the truth about their opinion on one of 2 topics. One topic was worded, should convicted cold-blooded murderers be executed? So some people say yes, some say no. Are they telling the truth when they say yes, or are they lying when they say yes? Or same with the no, okay?
Okay.
All right, so.
Is that it?
Yes, go ahead.
All right.
And what is your position on this issue?
I don't believe that they should be executed.
Why do you believe that?
And I don't see how the state can justify itself and actually killing another person to justify what the other person has done,
Smoking and non-smoking sections, I mean, that seems fair enough to me.
How long have you had this?
Ever since they brought it up, ever since it was in the news and stuff like that.
Is it your true opinion?
Yeah.
Or did you just make this up a few minutes ago?
No.
Are you lying to me?
No.
Liar, right? Because he looked completely uncomfortable.
eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and I feel that it's justice. I mean, there's always a chance that it could be the wrong person or something like that.
Boy, he believed him till the end.
There were a couple of times where you said, I've heard enough. Time to move on. Why was that?
One of the guys was, he had no reason for why he felt the way he felt. I think that the majority of people I basically trust, if you have a motivation to lie or you're trying to convince me of something, then I automatically don't trust you. You need something from me, you want something from me, so I immediately just distrust you. But if I just bump into some guy and he says, hey, what's up, I like your shirt or whatever, I believe him. There's no reason for you to lie about that. There's no benefit. There's a benefit for you. Then I question everything you say. I mean, big believer in Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
He gets about 70% on the deception test. That is high. The group who we've tested that's done the best on this is the U.S. Secret Service, and they average 73%. So he is right on the cusp of where they, as a group, will do. And that's the best group we've ever tested on.
So the headline is Matthew Cox better than Secret Service in detecting deception.
Not
That's the
better,
result.
not better, but close.
Close.
And I think he'd probably be very happy to hear that. Talked about the Secret Service chasing him down on more than one occasion. And so it suggests, though, that he's very good at reading people and, you know, judging and assessing them.
And it makes sense because he's spending a lot of time reading people, right? Like he kind of constantly, you talk to him and he's busy playing a chess game with the entire room.
Right. And he has this ability to learn from it because, you know, in everything he does, it's almost this sort of blunt force learning.
The positive version of ADHD. You're constantly running around doing other things, but it's all in the service of understanding the room.
You started work in 1998 with Eagle Finance Service?
It was Eagle Lending. The first loan I ever did had fraud. Before you sent off a package to the home office to be underwritten, you had to bring it to your manager. She said, your borrower has a 30-day late on our verification of rent. And I went, that was it. Your deal's done, it's over. She pulled out a bottle of Whiteout. You remember the old Whiteouts? You could
Do you have problems in your life that you want to get rid of?
She started going, she goes, here's what I do.
Seriously, Whiteout will solve all your problems.
She said, I would white it out, make a copy of it, and stick that back in the file, send it to underwriting. And I just remember, I was like, that's fraud. Like, I could go to jail. And she goes, you're not going to get caught. And so I whited it out. I made a copy, stuck it in the file, sent it to underwriting. The loan came back. It was approved. I got a check for $3,500. I was thrilled. Thrilled. Next guy that came in, 3 days later, I got a loan to close. Next guy, same thing. Next guy. Listen, after a couple months, I mean, you walked into my office with a pulse, you were getting a loan.
Matt has the ability to kind of turn off any feelings that he might have about who else might get hurt in the process. It didn't bother him to charge somebody a lot of money, you know, more than what was fair. I still feel a little uncomfortable, you know, not disclosing all that to those people.
What do you make of Mr. Matthew Cox?
He basically said that he's a psychopath. I mean, he has psychopathy, and he said that it's on a scale. So because I was a bit like, oh.
So, how long had you been speaking to him before he told you that he was a psychopath?
I think in the first 10 minutes, I would say.
So within the first 10 minutes of meeting you, he announces that he's a psychopath.
But it almost felt like a bit threat, because he said, like, be careful what you say about me.
I was wondering, because I've heard that you're quite upfront with people when you first meet them. Hi, I'm Matt Cox, and oh, I'm a psychopath. Has it become...
I don't think I said that. Well, my intro is, my catchphrase is, hi, my name's Matt Cox, and I'm a con man.
Right,
I don't
okay.
I think if the psychopath comes up, if somebody says, you know, well, you know, do you feel bad about that? Or I've had numerous people ask me, do you feel bad about that? Well, you know, no. No, and if they say why, then I typically say, because I'm a psychopath.
I want to know whether he's as big a psychopath as he wants us to believe, or whether actually we're being conned a little bit there as well.
If you were to kind of give it a intuitive answer, do you think that those are applicable to him, or it's just a good show?
Of course, it works nicely for him. It means that nobody can have any expectations of reasonable behaviour from him because, hey, I'm a psychopath.
Because one of the observations that Carrie and I sort of came to a conclusion watching him was he was an adrenaline junkie, it looked like.
Well, it seems that being a con artist is his own extreme sport. He just absolutely loves it, and he's very comfortable talking about it, which is brilliant. It's brilliant for us because he's giving us a masterclass in how to pull off a con.
I'd seen the movie Reservoir Dogs by Tarantino. In the movie, they'd given all the bad guys these color-coded names. So what I decided on was I was gonna start using color-coded names. So I went with Michael White, David Silver, Lee Black, Brandon Green, James Red, Glenn Pink. At the time, I thought I was being cute. The judge didn't think it was cute, you know. And I would go online and I would apply for secured credit cards in the name Brandon Green. Only this time, I wouldn't use the date of birth of a 10-month-old child. I would use the date of birth for the same date of birth, but the year I would change for a 32-year-old man. There's Brandon Green, works here, has 3 credit cards, all of them are paid well. Now I've got a perfect synthetic identity.
Do you think he's smart? Above average?
Yeah.
He says that he has an IQ of around 130, 140, which is way above average. Undoubtedly, he's a smart guy.
And he's this ability to iteratively learn, right? So one step, but keep in mind, with each of these steps, you have to remember all these steps. So they build on each other, and he doesn't seem to lose the previous step, right?
Can you imagine the confusion for most people in having a range of different identities?
One time I was running up a bunch of credit cards for like $50,000 or $100,000. I remember walking in, randomly gave the person the credit card, and they went, huh, it says to call. This was back when they would call. And the woman turns to me and she says, they want your date of birth? And I go, huh, hold on a second, let me see who I am today. And I open up the wallet. I go, oh, I said, I'm so-and-so, and my date of birth is July 7th, 1970. There it is right there. And she went, oh, it's 1970.
Right, that wasn't a huge red flag.
I could just be some jerk who's being cute. My name is Matt Cox, and I'm a con man. You know, what are you concerned about doing what? I've never seen $55 million. Anyway, being on the run was the most alive time.
Was it a stressful way to live?
I mean, yes, but at that point I was taking a drug called Paxil. Everything's perfectly okay and everything went fine and everything's great and you're walking through the supermarket and suddenly I would get this overwhelming sensation that God was about to just kill me. I was about to die. And my heart starts bumping, you know, banging in my chest, and I stop and I can't catch my breath. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm dying. Like, I'm about to die. And you have this coming. My rational thought is thinking, what are you doing? You're like 32 years old. You're in great shape. You're not gonna die. You're fine. This is just anxiety. Take a Xanax.
And were there any particular incidents that preceded those panic attacks?
No, because because by that point I was closing loans that contained fraud so regularly. It was every few days. This loan's closing, there's bad W-2s. This loan's closing, that company doesn't exist. You know, this loan's closing and this guy's getting $60,000 back that he's not supposed to. And you know, there's always something going wrong with, not going wrong, but some fraudulent thing happening in all of these transactions at all the time. So the stress level is up there. It's being mitigated by drugs, and periodically there's a panic attack in there and I take a Xanax and just keep on going.
From all of my experience with people who do bad things, there are a lot of moments where they kind of feel remorse and they feel regret or they explain, but there's one thing that's common to all of them. And that is when you ask them to reflect on it, they say, I felt alive.
And he mentioned this, right? When he's immersed in the moment, he has panic attacks later, but never in the moment, never while it's going on. It's always sort of a delayed reaction in some random point afterwards. So while he's in it, though, it engages, I think, all of his senses, all of his mind, everything is tied up. He's alive.
He's in flow, he's in creative flow, but on steroids.
His fear of insignificance is so strong that it overrides the social norms that you would have. He's jovial on the outside, but I don't think he ever experiences any true peace or satisfaction.
What you're going to see is like a neutral face will pop up.
Right.
And then about 3 seconds later, you'll see the same person, but this time showing an expression, maybe like a happy or fear or whatever, but only for 1/15 of a second. And then it goes back to the neutral face. So it'll be a flash. So once that image appears, don't blink. Then make your judgment, circle what emotion you thought you saw it, okay? It is a very quick flash. Use your best judgment. The term we use for these are called micro expressions. A little artificial, because in day-to-day life, people don't go, you know,
Right.
with a neutral face. They're talking, their heads are moving, but you might get little expressions. Sometimes they fit what the person is saying, and sometimes they don't. How good are you at perceiving that? Is that the last one?
That's it.
Okay. Okay, let's look at his ability to judge very subtle emotions, shown 1/15 of a second, these micro expressions. He gets 64% correct on this. All right, the average person gets 55 or so. So he's scoring higher than average there. Now he's not scoring like super high, so it shows he is perceptive. But again, not off the charts perceptive, but yet perceptive.
I had him take the affective test where I, asked him about emotions in response to things, and I noticed that his response when he gives you the answer are not aligned with what I think his brain tells me. So he sees a picture of something and he gives a correct answer. He says, that's a bad picture, but he doesn't respond in disgust to a bad picture. He kind of knows the correct answer, but it doesn't seem to show in the way I would expect.
Maybe he's just playing it close to the vest.
He fell right where the average person falls, in the middle of the bell curve. Maybe he just learned to become kind of blend in because that's a good con artist skill, to look like everyone else.
Yeah, it's funny, I was just thinking exactly that when you were saying that, we worry about test people faking good or faking bad, but people faking average, is that actually a thing, right?
Maybe that's the result.
Maybe that's
just at the center.
Maybe that's the con man skill set, right? Faking average, looking, blending in, all the other stuff.
That actually would make sense. Like you go to a room, you check all the 20 people in the room and kind of figure out what's the average, what's the bell curve, and you say, okay, I'm going to pivot to be like everyone else, so no one's going to tell that I'm the outlier.
And when he shows up at the bank, you want to look average. You don't want to look really poor. You don't want to look really rich. You don't want to do things that are going to draw attention to yourself. I'm an average guy taking out $26,000 in cash.
I noticed when we were chatting in the kitchen, you mirror body language. Do you do that deliberately, or is that just something that you do naturally? So when I changed position, did you not notice that?
No.
So when I was like this in the kitchen,
I wasn't feeling defensive.
yeah. So that was just
Maybe
a
I was.
So that was, I don't know, but you
Little bit.
You were.
Told my girlfriend, I said, I don't think this chick likes me. She's a little bit, she's a little bit hard on me.
I'm a little bit hard on everybody, so that's my job. That's my job, but it's not been too bad, has it?
It hasn't been super comfortable.
He's a marvelous liar. Like, he had me convinced about his ex-wife. When her and I got together after he took off and we started comparing notes, it was amazing just the intricate lies that he told to keep the two of us from talking. To keep lies like that going and That's 5 years. He was married and then divorced the whole time I was around. Like, it was fantastic. He's a fantastic liar.
These are women that I was dating that saw that I had money, that were interested in getting involved and making some money. Now, I'm not running a charity. If you say, hey, you know, what can I do so I can make some money? Well, then I'm gonna say, well, I mean, look, if you want to do this and this and this, I'll give you this percentage of whatever we end up making.
Yeah.
What happens is then when they get caught, it turned into he targeted me. He knew I was broke. He knew I was a single mother struggling. He coerced me into getting involved in his scams. And all of that was done and orchestrated by this attorney, so that when they got in front of the judge, they could try and mitigate their role. The media picked up on it because that's great. This guy's a complete scumbag. What I did is bad enough. I don't need you to make it worse.
Everybody paid a price that associated with Matt somehow, some way. Some people did jail time, some of them are on probation, some of them lost lots of money, recognition, all that stuff. And I just think, you know, you can sit there and say, well, Matt's manipulative and Matt's this and that and everything, but we're all adults. You know, we're all adults and responsible for the choices that we make.
But then how you met your current girlfriend?
I met in the halfway house.
What is a halfway house?
So when you're released from prison, they release you to a halfway house. She had been in prison for 5 years on a meth conspiracy, so she was a drug dealer. I met her in the halfway house.
So
I
you guys
targeted
both
her.
knew.
She's a single mother, and I targeted her. And I thought, I'm making her my girlfriend, and she has no choice. So I worked on her over the next 6 months, and we started dating. And we're still dating to this, to this day.
It seems to me that you are a fast learner. So when you got caught for the first time, why didn't you stop?
Well, so after getting caught, I had two choices. It's either claim bankruptcy and get a job at McDonald's and start my whole life over as a felon, or I thought I could just go deeper into the fraud. I'd done a bunch of fraudulent loans for my ex-wife. She borrowed like $500,000 on some houses. She then called me and asked me to meet her and her husband for lunch. She tells me the FBI raided her office, took a bunch of her files, and took some of my files that proved that were fraudulent. And she said, the FBI is asking me questions about you. I immediately start saying, oh my God, you didn't tell them this, did you? You didn't tell them the W-2s are fake. You didn't tell them this. I just laid out their case for them within about 30 seconds. And then as I'm talking, I realize, oh man, she and her husband are wired.
You got set up and you got played. So how did you feel?
Oh, that was horrible, horrible. And I was just shocked. And the truth is, it was, pride. My pride has gotten me into so much trouble. Every bad decision I've ever made in my life was all based on my pride.
And you eventually were on the most wanted list.
Right.
How did your family, but I'm thinking of your father in particular, how did he react?
When I was in prison, I think he came once or twice with my mom, and then he came one time by himself.
Right, and how did that go?
It didn't, I would say it went well, but remember when he walked in, I thought, I immediately thought my mom had died. He'd never come by himself. So why would you come by yourself? Like, my mother dragged him down there before. So he walked in and he sat down and he said, oh, it's okay, your mom's fine, she's fine. He said, I just wanted to come down and talk to you. And he just said, we just talked, you know. He said, we just talked.
Did you feel that you made peace with him then before he died?
I had, like, my out date for prison. I was going to be released in 2030. And I didn't have any chance that I was going to get it reduced. He said, you're going to be okay. You'll get out of here. I was like, yeah, in 2030. I said, I'll probably die in here. And he said, no. He said, you're smart and you're clever and you're going to figure a way out. And I just remember thinking, you're delusional. And he said, yeah, he just said he was proud of me. And that
Had he said that before?
I don't know if he's ever said it before, if he ever said it before. But it was just, it just felt like a slap in the face.
It felt like a slap in the face?
Because I had done so many things, and I had seen it and felt like he was proud of me. But this time, you know, I was in federal prison. Like, I'm in federal prison doing 26 years for something that I'm 100% guilty of. And now you're proud of me. Like, you know.
Why couldn't you be that?
Right.
Back in the day when I needed you to be that.
Right. When I wanted to be an artist, wasn't proud of me. When I wanted, you know, there were so many things along the way that he could have showed some interest or pride in, and he never did. I end up in prison, now you're proud of me. I mean, the guy, he was just a dick.
That drive to impress his father and to be able to so singularly focus and be able to work systematically down the line and keep it all in his head at the same time, I think was really impressive. And then trying to appeal to his father.
If he were this huge psychopath that he's been portrayed as, and actually he portrays himself as on occasions, you would have expected to find something unusual, wouldn't you? And you didn't.
At least for him not to be right at the center would be a start. And even that didn't happen.
So there was nothing that was going psychopath brain, psychopath brain, psychopath brain.
Neither in his brain, nor in his behavior.
Hi.
So I ran tons of tests with you. We spent hours running through a lot of tests. There was nothing that kind of was separated between what your brain does and what your behavior does. There was a perfect alignment between what you said and what your brain, so to speak, said.
I mean, I'm okay with that. I don't think anything's gonna change my behavior or alter, you know, my perception of myself.
No, I don't think so either. And we noticed that you don't fully appreciate the impact that you've had on other people and the havoc that you've wreaked in other people's lives in terms of your fraudulent behavior. You conned institutions, banks, so you don't really think about individual victims.
There are more and more stories about what's called the brain defense. People who do something bad and then they go to court and their defense is, it's not me, it's my brain. Would you characterize yourself in any way as like someone who...
Well, I wouldn't try and use that as a defense.
It's interesting that nothing has come back that says, wow, this guy has a psychopathic brain. Yes, you love cons. It's easy, isn't it, to go with the
Well, yeah.
mega psycho responses, because you get a reaction out of people.
It's just shock value, and it's what, you know, and people want to hear that, and I'm good with it.
So you'd rather hear that, psychopath, than really smart guy who cut some corners and fraudulently got some money?
Yeah, there's lots of those guys, yeah.
So psychopath has got more panache to you.
Yeah.
I think that you've got some incredible skills. You're incredibly creative. when they're mixed with more pleasant characteristics, such as humility, put you in a sweet spot for success. Does that make sense?
Right.
It was a pleasure.
All right. It's nice meeting you.
Take care. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This was interesting.
Safe journey back.